YouTube? Justin Fuller, and today is a good day. We're going to be reviewing the 2024 Honda CRV LX, arguably the most popular SUV that Honda has to offer and the most popular trim. So if you're wondering, how does this stack up against other SUVs out there in the market, and then is it different from a 2023? We're going to go over all that, so let's hop on in. You're probably curious about is what is underneath the hood of this 2024 Honda CRV LX. So let's pull you on in and talk about that. You are looking at a 1.5 liter turbo engine putting out 190 horsepower. This is a two-wheel drive model, so it's going to be putting 28 in the city and 34 on the highway. Understand there's a hybrid model as well related to this vehicle. But while we're here, I want to point out a couple quick things. One, easy access to your battery terminal. So if you need to add additional lights, amps, subs, anything like that, you can get to these very easy. As far as accessing reservoirs to get to anything like that, it can be very easy. Your dipstick, a lot of space that you can work with back here in case you want to add anything into the vehicle. All right, guys, so now as I mentioned, this is a non-hybrid vehicle. So this is a 190 horsepower coming out of a 1.5 liter turbo engine. If you were looking at a hybrid model, the EX is not a hybrid model, but if you jump to one of those trim levels, you're then looking at a 2-liter engine putting out 204 horsepower, so something to be aware of. Also, related to that, I get asked about this every once in a while, so I wanted to go over it. A 0 to 60 time in this particular model, you're looking at 8.7 seconds. Now, if you jumped over that hybrid model, getting a little bit more horsepower, a little bit more torque, you're looking at 7.6 seconds. So just something to keep in mind if you're looking for a little bit more get up and go. The hybrid is actually the better model to go, and you're gonna get better gas mileage. All right, guys, so before we leave the front of this car, there's two comparisons that I wanna go over with you. The first is the engine as far as putting out horsepower. I'm gonna throw a comparison up on the screen so you can see how this car, putting out 190 horsepower, compares to other makes and models out there in the world. Now, on that topic, if you're looking at a 2023, it is the exact same engine and transmission, so you don't have anything to worry about there. You could buy a 23 and save yourself a couple bucks. Now, after that, 0 to 60 times. I mentioned that this has an 8.7 second 0 to 60 time. So I'm gonna throw a comparison up so you can see how this car stacks up to other makes and models out there. So in case you're planning on drag racing this and you wanna be in Fast and the Furious 11, maybe that's important to you. And if not, let's hop over to miles per gallon. So when you're talking about MPGs, miles per gallon and balancing the car are kind of two different things. I need cargo space. I need space for my kids, my family, that stuff. But I also want to get MPGs because we're probably going to drive this a good amount, right? So this car gets 28 in the city and 34 on the highway, and that's on regular unleaded gas. Now, as I mentioned earlier, there is a hybrid model that gets 43 in the city and 36 on the highway. So if you're really looking for that additional gas mileage, you might want to jump up a trim level and get to one of those hybrid models. So really quickly, I want to do a comparison as far as miles per gallon goes. So I'm going to throw some on the screen so you can see how the 28 in the city and 34 on the highway goes against other vehicles out there in the market. Now, as we're talking about that, I'll remind you that the 2023 model is the exact same. So you don't have to worry about losing out on gas mileage if you decide to save a couple bucks and buy something that's pre-owned. So if you're SUV shopping, chances are cargo space is arguably gonna be one of the most important things as far as what you're shopping for, right? So let's talk about the cargo space in the back of this. So I'm gonna pull you on in here. Now, in the back, you can see I've got some floor mats, which, a reminder, this comes with CarPlay floor mats. Not every make and model offers that. In the back, you can see this right here. This is a cargo tray. This is something the dealership has added. If you're interested in things like cargo trays or all-season mats, I've done some reviews on some different companies through Amazon. I'll throw some links in the description. You can check out if you're looking to buy stuff like that. It'll save you some money. Now in the back, something kind of cool that they did here that you don't see in a lot of others is you can see how I have this lip right now. You don't necessarily have to use that. You can actually pop this up and make it flat if you want. So we'll see if I can do this with one hand just to show you. So you can make it a little bit more flat if you want to, or drop this down in there. Now below this is where your spare is going to live. So a full diameter spare. What does that mean? That means the full height of a normal wheel, just not the full width. So unlike a donut where you have to drive like 35, you can actually drive up the speed on this. I will remind you, if you're looking at a hybrid model, they do not come with a spare. They are only gonna come with a tire repair kit. So back here you can see I have my jack, my accessories, and then this little funnel right here that I wanna talk about. So this is one of those things that you don't know what it is and you're not gonna know until you need it, right? So what this is related to gas. So when you come up to the gas, you'll notice that there's no cap on it. It's got a valve here that presses back. Well, if you ever run out of gas and you don't happen to have a gas can in your car, you need a way to be able to hold this open. Well, that is what this is for. I can hold this open and then pour gas into it using whatever means I have available to me. So if you ever run out of gas, know about this. Now, before I give you the cargo space comparisons and talk about the dimensions, there's one other trick I want to show you related to gas. So if you come back here, right, you're gonna see this little panel here. Well, if this ever gets stuck and it won't open for you, that's where this panel comes into play. You can actually come down here and pop this off, and there's a little wire you can pull behind it, and that'll help get it unstuck to where then you can pop this bad boy open. All right, guys, so there's two dimensions that I want to talk to you related to cargo space. The first is going to be with the seats up, right? So from here back is going to be 39.3 cubic feet of space inside of the vehicle. So if you're looking at 2023, it's almost the exact same, not much different there, right? Now, the second is going to be with the seats down. If you fold these seats down, you have 76.5 cubic feet of space in the back end of this car. It's actually pretty decent. And it's actually a little bit, I think it's 1.2 cubic feet better than the previous generation. So how are they squeaking that out? I'm not really sure, but know that you got a little bit more than 24, but it's kind of negligible if you're shopping, right? Probably not going to make a difference unless you really are going to pack this thing tight. But while we're here, I want to do some comparisons. I want to first open comparisons so you can understand how does the 39.3 in the back compete with other makes and models out there in the world. After you've taken a look at that, let's talk about the 76.5 cubic feet and how that stacks up to other makes and models out there in the world. After you've taken a look at those two comparisons, let's hop into the second row and talk about a couple things. All right, guys, so before we go any further, there's something really important I want to discuss with you, and that's related to the car and the trim levels. It's arguably the most confusing part for most people. So let's talk about that. This is an EX model. So the base model of this car, let's start with this. There are 6 different trim levels of this car, right? And that includes the hybrids and non-hybrids. So your base model is an LX model, right? When you get one above that, then you're in the EX. That's what this car is right here. So still not a hybrid, right? So this car is $33,790, and that includes 2 things. One, the destination cost, which is $1,325. That's charged to every car. And then this one happens to be a premium color, which they charge you $455 extra for. Started doing that a couple years ago. Ask me, that's kind of lame, but it is what it is, right? So above the EX is going to be your sport hybrid. So that is the first hybrid model that is going to be available. So understand you're in a unique position if you're looking at this car, because below it is a standard gasoline engine, but above it is a hybrid model. Now, above the sport hybrid is going to be an EXL. So you're back to a non-hybrid model. And then above that is a sport hybrid L. That is going to be new for 2024. So if you're looking at 2023, you're not going to find that trim because it didn't exist. And then at the very top is your sport touring. So that's all the bells, all the whistles, all the monies, right? So while we're here and we've talked about that, I want you to understand 2 things. One, if I drop down the LX model, one, I'm going to throw something up so you can see how much money does that save me. And then 2, what is the list of items that I'm going to give up to save that money, right? So if you go down to the base model, and then secondarily, okay, I'm in the EX, but I'm maybe considering going up to that next model, right? I want a couple of bells and whistles, and I want that extra gas mileage. Okay, well, what is that going to cost me, right? What additional money? And then what additionally do I get, right? I get some additional gas mileage, but what extra bells and whistles do I get related to amenities in the car? So take a look at that as well. So now that we understand the trim levels, let's talk about the second row, the leg space and the amenities, right? So I've got 41 inches of leg space in this car. I was in the driver's seat earlier, and if I flip this down, you can see that I've still got a good amount of space behind me. I'm 6 foot 250, so I'm not a tiny person. So if you're thinking, hey, I'm a little bit bigger, am I going to fit in the driver's seat and am I going to fit in the passenger seat? The answer is yes, you absolutely will. But while we're here, I want to throw comparison up on the screen so you can see how the 41 inches in this car stacks up to other makes and models out there in the world. If you are considering a 2023, understand that it's almost a negligible difference, so you don't have much to worry about there as well. So back here, you'll notice that it's a cloth interior with a bit of a 2-tone finish to it. If you want that leather, you're going to have to jump up to that EXL and above trim levels, but you will find leather here and leather here. So kind of nice that they do that at least there. You got one seat pocket back here, and in typical Honda fashion, they didn't give you one here. Now, arguably, one of the most important parts here in Texas are going to be right here. I want to know that I have air vents in case it's cold or it's hot. I need to get air to my kiddos in the back or my dogs. And then secondarily, I want some USBs. They give you USB-Cs back here, so that if you are taking a long trip in this car, you can charge those devices and continue to use them. So we talked about the leg space in the back end of this car, but let's talk about in the front. In the front of this car, you've got 41.3 inches of leg space. That has been the same for I don't know how many years in this car. So if you're looking at a 2023 or something even older than that, understand it's the exact same. But while we're talking about that leg space, I want to throw a comparison up on the screen so you can see how this car and the 41.3 inches of leg space you get up here compares with other makes and models out there in the world. Now, as you take a look at that, I'll just point out a couple quick things. There's all season floor mats in this car, so if you're looking for those, understand it doesn't come standard in this car. That is something they've added to this car. And like I said, I've got links in the description if that's something you're interested in buying them. There's plenty of company that makes laser cut TPE, same material, same everything, except considerably less expensive. Now, up here, I'm going to point out that you've got some speakers here, speakers up here, tweeters, and then you've got speakers in the back. I want to take a second to just throw something on the screen so you can understand by trim level, what does the speaker system sound like? And not necessarily sound like, but the wattage and the amount of speakers is what I should really say. Now, as far as the sound coming out of it, I will tell you it's okay. Now, I'm the kind of guy who has subs and amps, so I would typically add something to this vehicle anyways, but if you're the average driver, does this sound okay? Yeah, it sounds absolutely okay in this car. You can get down the road, you can listen to it, and it's not going to be like road noise is overbearing to you, but maybe you want to add something if you're a little bit more of an audiophile like I am. Now, related to the front row, there is something I want to talk about real quick, and that's going to be the seats. Now, if you're looking at a base model, it's going to be a manual driver's seat and a manual passenger seat. In the EX, you're going to have a powered driver's seat, but a manual seat. If you go up to that EXL, I think is where you're going to find the seats are going to be powered on both sides. So understand that trim level wise, there are some differences as far as powered seats, if that's something that's important to you to get that lower lumbar support and some of those additional amenities. Now, a couple years ago, they cleaned up the dash and the display, and they gave it much like this. This landed in the Civic first, and then they added to all the cars. So not a lot of buttons, not a lot of clutter, and I really like that. If you get in like a new Subaru Forester, there's a lot going on here, and then they've got like 48 different buttons on the steering wheel. I like that Honda has really minimized what you see here just to make it less confusing and easier to understand and work through. So really quickly, I want to talk about the steering wheel and then display back here. I'm not going to harp too much on this, but as I mentioned, there's a very minimal setup, right? You don't got buttons underneath and buttons above and all these different things. I really like that because it can be confusing, and the last thing I want you to do is look at the steering wheel and not up at the road, right? So over here, you've got a home button. Now, your home button controls the menu that you see. I'm going to be able to scroll around through some different things, all my different menu options. Now, I typically go through these, but I'm not going to this time. I'm just going to tell you that settings is where you can get to a lot of different things if you want to change like vehicle settings. So like door lock setup, window setup, how long lights stay on, all these different things. I have made tips and tricks videos that you can get to learn all about that and touchscreen settings as well. So just understand that this is where your basic settings are, and all I'm doing is scrolling with my finger to get to these. Now, your voice command button is right here. To jump between tracks, and your volume controls are right here as well. And then source, so FM, AM, USB, Bluetooth, whatever I may be, Apple CarPlay, Android Auto, they're wired in this car, so understand that if you want a non-wired connection, you're gonna have to jump some trim levels, so just be aware of that. Now, on the other side of this car is where you're gonna find some of those safety features related to the car. There's two of them over here. The first is gonna be my adaptive cruise control. So when I get to the speed I wanna set, I would simply press the button up here, right? So when I press it, you're gonna see this come on right here. Now from there, I can then select the distance it's gonna keep between me using this button. Whenever I press this, there's some boxes that are gonna appear up there. The more boxes, the more space it keeps in front of the car in front of me. So what this is designed to do, so if I get up to 65 and the guy in front of me slows down, my car will slow down and keep space. And the way it's doing that is there's radar in the front to bounce off the car in front of me. So kind of cool. Now, related to that, this car has collision mitigation braking, which is using that same technology. So if it's looking like I'm gonna rear in another car, it can actually apply the brakes to help prevent the accident from me rear-ending somebody. And it's using that radar to bounce off cars in front of me. Understand all these features you can turn on and off. Now, if you want just classic cruise, if you press and hold this button, you'll hear a beep. It'll say cruise mode selected, and now I'm just classic cruise, right? This won't apply. And if I press and hold, now it's back to adaptive cruise control. Now, the next one is this button right here. If I press this button, you'll see a steering wheel with some lines, same graphic there. And what it's gonna do is it's gonna use the camera up here to detect the lines on the road. So if I'm in the center lane of a highway and I start to drift a little bit to the left or the right, not paying attention, it'll actually center my car. It'll actually pull the steering wheel a little bit to the left. So if you've ever been in a car that pulls a little bit, that's what it feels like. So it's not gonna overpower you, but it'll prevent you from drifting into a concrete embankment or another car in case you got distracted and looked back because your kids, your dogs, whatever happened, and then you turn around and now you're in a different lane, right? So this is gonna be super helpful, and so is this one. Now, related to this, there are some additional Honda sensing features that I wanna touch on. The next is gonna be blind spot monitoring, right? So if I come over here, you can see the indicator that I have right here. So this is what's gonna light up whenever there's somebody in my blind spot. Now, if there's somebody in my blind spot, that'll light up. If I start to get over, it'll actually beep to say, hey, there's somebody there, pay attention. So blind spot monitoring does land inside of this vehicle. Now, this car does have one additional Honda sensing feature, and you can see I have the menu of them pulled up here that I got over on the steering wheel, and that's gonna be road departure mitigation. Road departure mitigation is very similar to lane keep assist, which is the one I told you uses the camera to detect the lines on the road. In the distance here though, it's just gonna be detecting the line on the side so I don't drift off the side of the road. So if I got drowsy and they're like, right? So it's using that same technology, but it's helping prevent that. And you can see right here, this is where I can turn some of those features on and off. So blind spot information system, collision mitigation braking, all I gotta do is click on them and I can turn them off. Very simple to turn on and off these features. So just be aware of that. All right, guys, so let's talk about the touchscreen inside of this vehicle. This car has a 7-inch touchscreen, and that's what you're seeing here right now. Now, if you jump up into that, I believe the Sport Hybrids, that's where you're gonna find that 9-inch touchscreen. So understand trim level does dictate which size of the touchscreen that you're gonna have. Now, related to the touchscreen, they've really dumbed this down from the previous generation, not being the 2023, but a couple models before that, to where you had a lot of customization that you could really take advantage of. So now when you jump in here, very basic settings, you know, sound, Bluetooth, clock, things like that are gonna be easily easily accessible, right? If you just need to do some basics like, hey, I need to connect up my smart device, you know, Apple CarPlay or Android Auto, or connecting simply a phone up to the vehicle, not hard to do. But outside of that, they haven't really set you up for a lot of success here. When you're coming in here, I've got my audio running. I can select what media I want, Bluetooth, AM, FM, Android Auto, right? And jump into my phone as far as my Bluetooth settings. Now you can see I'm using an Android device. I'm using a Pixel 7a. Let's jump into Android Auto and talk about what you can customize. So I'm gonna go ahead and connect up here. Now, I have already plugged in my phone. A reminder, this is a wired connection as far as that goes. If you are looking to get wireless Apple CarPlay or Android Auto, but you don't want to jump trim levels, understand I have done a review on a dongle that will create that for you. It's like 70 bucks with my discount. So I'll throw a link up and down in the description with some info. I also have something else set up to where if you want to set this up to where you can watch Netflix, Amazon Prime, Kodi, Tubi, whatever you want, I can set this up to where your touchscreen is more like a tablet. So I've got an entire video on that. I'll throw a link up in the description and up at the top of the screen so you can see, hey, if I want to do that, what does it look like? What does it cost? That sort of thing. So a couple different options you can take advantage of if this isn't exactly what you want. But while we're here, I'll just point out a couple things. One, you can see I've got Google Maps pulled up, a couple different directions, and then my songs, right? I'm using Spotify here. Understand all of this is customizable. And if you want to mess with this, you can jump in here. You can see I have a customized background. I've got a couple shortcuts set up. One to call directly to my Google phone number, and then two to direct me to the nearest gas station. So it's super helpful that you can set those up. If you don't know how to set those up or want to learn, check out my tips and tricks videos. It's in the description of this video. It will walk you through and show you how to set these things up. They're not hard to do, but they're very helpful because you can customize what the order is and all these different things. But I'll show you some basic stuff. If I jump into settings here, this is where I can scroll around here and get to a couple things. One, if you want to change the wallpaper, not hard to do. It's right there, right? Pick a new one. That's the one I want. Cool. Now I've got that wallpaper set up. But I'm going to scroll down here a little bit further because there's one thing that I really do like, and that's going to be the layout. I sometimes like my media to be closer to me. So if I do that, what it'll do is when I jump over to this, now the media is over here and my maps are over there, or maybe you like it vice versa. Those are just two of the basic setups that you can change in here that I really like, but understand there are a lot of options. All right, guys, so we made it through the full review of this vehicle, but I want to go back and revisit a lot of the comparisons that we did so that you can, you know, if you were scrubbing through or you got distracted, you were cooking, you were doing something else, we're going to re-hit those all real quick here so that you can kind of understand what's going on. So the first thing, we're going to start at the front and work our way to the back of the car. Under the hood, you've got 190 horsepower running to a CVT, putting out 28 in the city and 34 on the highway. So 190 horsepower coming out of this. I'm going to throw that comparison up. You can see how this car stacks with two other makes and models out there in the world. While that is up, I will remind you that if you were looking at the hybrid model, you can get 204 horsepower out of this car. So understand that depending on the trim level of the car, you are going to be riding in a little bit different engine. Now, if you're looking at a 2023 model, understand there is no changes related to the engine, transmission, horsepower, things like that. So it's going to be the exact same. Now let's talk about miles per gallon. This car, the EX, gets 28 in the city and 34 on the highway. So I'm going to throw a comparison to see how this car stacks up to other makes and models out there in the world. Just a reminder, if you jump down that 2023, not going to make a difference. It's going to be the exact same. But if you jump to that hybrid model, you can get 43 in the city and 36 on the highway. So that is a considerable jump in gas mileage. So if that's something important to you, you might want to look at the trim above this. Related to that, let's talk about trims. A reminder, below this is the LX, that is your base model. Above this is the Sport Hybrid. So you have a standard gasoline engine below it, but the next level up is gonna be a hybrid. So I wanna throw a couple things up on the screen. One, if you drop down to the LX, how much money is it gonna save you? And then two, what is the list of items that you're giving up? And then after you've looked at that, let's talk about jumping the other way. If I jump up to that Sport Hybrid, how much extra am I gonna spend? What additional amenities and things am I gonna get out of that? So now that you've looked at that, let's talk about the front row. You've got 41.3 inches of leg space in this car. I'm going to throw a comparison up on the screen so you can see how this car stacks up to other makes and models. The 41.3 is the exact same in the 23, 22, like I don't know how many years back. So not a lot of change as far as the dimensions in the front of this car. As a 6-footer who weighs about 250, I fit in this car just fine. I can widen my legs out. I don't run into anything. I don't feel uncomfortable. So understand if you're a bigger guy, shouldn't be a concern. Now, when you jump into the second row, you've got 41 inches of leg space. I want to say it's a little bit different from the 23, but not huge. It's like not even a whole inch. But I want to throw a comparison up so you can see how the 41 inches stacks up to other makes and models out there in the world. After you've looked at that, let's talk about cargo space, right? So there's two dimensions of cargo space I want to talk about. The first is the most common. If I have the seats folded up, right, just the standard cargo space, it's 39.3 cubic feet. So I'm going to throw a comparison up and see how this car stacks up to other makes and models out there in the world. Now, compared to a 2023, if you're thinking about shopping something used, I want to say it's almost the exact same, right? I think it's the exact same. So not a lot of difference there. Now, if you fold the seats down, you get 76.5 cubic feet, which I want to say is about a cubic foot or so different than the 2023. So I'm going to throw that comparison up so you can see how this car with the seats seats folded down, stacks up to other makes and models out there in the world. After you've taken a look at that, that's pretty much the rundown of the car. Would I recommend this car? Absolutely. Would I recommend the hybrid over the non-hybrid? It really just depends on how you're going to use it, right? If you're going to do a lot of driving, the hybrid makes a lot of sense. I would probably jump up and spend the additional, I think it's like almost $2,000 to get that hybrid personally. But if it's not important to you and you work from home and you don't drive that much, well then maybe this makes more sense, right? But I would prefer to have the gas mileage, because as of right now, I sit in a car that has like 5 miles per gallon, right? It's awful. So it's just an understanding of what you need the car for. Now, as far as a car for older people, younger people, people with families, I love that this car doesn't sit really high and it doesn't sit really low. So if you're older, you got bad knees, you're young and you got bad knees, you can shift in and out of this car very easy. I like that the second row has air vents and USBs back there. So if you have little ones or ones that are gonna be taking a road trip, you can keep them entertained. And then in the back, you've got a good enough amount of cargo space that you can throw a good amount of, like, whether it be a drum kit if you're in a band, whether it be a bunch of stuff if you like to go camping, maybe you need a lot of suitcases because you travel a lot. All of that will fit in the back of this car. My one complaint about the 24 model is that when you flip the seats down, it's now got this kind of hump in the back. It used to be very flat, so if you're camping and the weather got bad, you could just fold the seats down and lay in the back of the car. You can't really do that anymore, and that's kind of a bummer. But in the grand scheme of things, is that really that bad? Absolutely not. So hopefully that helps you out. I will ask you to do me a couple favors. One, I hope you press the like button because you like the way I present the content. Two, leave me a comment. Let me know if you think I missed something. There's something you want to go over. A perfect example, the 0 to 60 times. I used to not do that. A guy asked me, I said, why not? I think that's a great idea. Let's start adding it in. So I look forward to hearing what you think and what you would like to see. Third, I hope you'll subscribe to my channel so when I put out videos like this, you will get them. And then fourth, I hope you share this. If you got a friend who's shopping around for, maybe for a Subaru or a Toyota RAV4 or whatever the case may be, and you're saying, hey man, you might want to look at the CRV. I think you'll like the way this guy presents the comparisons. I hope that you'll share it with him. Other than that, hope you like, comment, subscribe, all the things. Later, guys!